Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Stewart, and we have Larry Taylor with us tonight, luckily, and we're going to go into an update. There's stuff going on behind the scenes. I guess, hi, Larry, how you doing?
Hello, Stewart. Thanks for having me.
Well, where do you want to start? This deal with Trump seems to be heating up. I was reading an article where it said that we're the most divided nation ever. Evidently, I don't know how they come up with that conclusion. And that really what we're watching, I guess, is a war between the communists and Marxists and Fabian socialists. And I don't know what you would call Trump's group. He seems to be surrounding himself with people that are, I guess, more basically in tune with the Constitution than Obama ever was. But this thing looks like this could get from a kind of a cold war of rhetoric over into a hot war of a lot of violence. What's your take? Now, I understand that New York, the FBI issued a warning about a terrorist threat at the Macy's parade. Is that right?
Well, that's the report, and even Debka File is also posting on it. Said that they had information that ISIS and Al-Qaeda were calling for lone wolf attacks, terror attacks on the Macy's New York Thanksgiving parade, which is tomorrow. So apparently, the FBI echoed some of those concerns, and I heard this evening late that New York had activated 3,000 members of its terror squads and units throughout the city.
Well, that doesn't sound too good, but, maybe if they're forewarned, nothing will happen, hopefully. I really do worry about Trump because he's put everything into this. And if Hillary and company, or the Obama cartel, as you sometimes call it, or we could call it the Obama-Clinton whatever cartel, I guess. There's so many involved in it. But they're going to play for keeps. I cannot imagine, after coming all this way, that they're going to allow Trump to have an easy time of this. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. They're so deeply involved in this move, and as you and I have shared before, I was actually shocked that they allowed the election to actually come off. But I do believe that they literally thought that Hillary Clinton had already been coronated the Queen of America, I suppose you could say, and already had it in the bag. And what's so interesting is that Trump actually took the election by the electoral votes, even though she wound up, I suppose, with, of course, a big swing by California, but, she wound up with the most popular vote, but he actually won it by the electoral votes, which is our system, and now they're mad because that's the system.
Yeah. Well, if the system doesn't work for us, then we got to throw it out, right? In other words, if we didn't win when we thought we were winning, well, we got to get rid of the system. But these guys they're mad dogs, and they mean to do harm if they can do it. And I think they will resort to more and more violence if they can't get what they want. This thing on the electoral system, I mean, they're calling these guys and issuing death threats. Some of them have said that they were threatened with, they and their families, I would assume, were going to be in big-time trouble if they didn't switch their vote. So, I mean, it is, as we said on the other, that could happen.
Yeah, well,
right?
what we had heard, too, is that, they are saying that they received death threats, and some of them are wanting to change their vote. And my understanding is there is going to be another vote in December. I can't remember if it's the 19th or
19th.
Exact date.
Yep. 19th.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting what Putin said. Kind of chimes back to me about, he said a Trump election actually, stopped World War III, but it started the American Revolution, and it's looking more and more like we are such a divided nation that we're going into a civil war, a revolution, and of course, I refer back again to Jeremiah, ruler against ruler. There we are.
Yeah, and then, but the next phrase is even more troubling. Violence in the land. If we have violence in the land, there are several interpretations of the word for violence. One is unjust gain, but the other one more or less indicates that there is trouble in the land, and that means that. Well, let me word it this way. We have Dmitri Duduman on his prophecies. Who was the other fellow that had one? The fellow from Norway.
Yeah, that was Anton Johansson.
And that America kind of divided itself up into various states. And there was a Russian scientist who said he foresaw that was going to happen. Now, in order for that to happen, that means that this Trump thing is not going to go the way the people think it is. Now, I was reading on Drudge, Americans now upbeat, think that things are going to happen, stock market through the roof, all of this sort of happiness going on, but they can pull the plug on that.
Well,
and I've often wondered. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention there's two sides to that because, on one hand, you've got all of these headlines about the stock market up and everything looks good and the Trump, team's on a roll. And then on the other hand, you're hearing things like Trump encircled by the left, Trump encampment under siege. I mean, you can't have it both ways. It's one or the other.
Well, that's what I'm afraid of, I guess, is a blowback. If they somehow stall Trump or they stop him from doing what he said he was going to do, and the American people become dissatisfied because he's kind of frozen, but he did say to the people, look, I can't do this without you. You're the ones that are going to have to put the pressure on to make Congress do what Congress ought to do in the first place, but they never do. So he's coming up against a whole group of treasonous leaders in both the Republican and the Democratic Party, along with the Department of Homeland Security, and evidently even the FBI is severely compromised. Not that that's new. They lied through their teeth on the Waco debacle, and that should have tipped off most people that there's something amiss within the Department of Justice and the FBI, but I guess most people didn't pay any attention to that in the final raid where they killed all those people. And, that was Hillary Clinton, basically, that gave the order to do that. And so this is, maybe this is payback. Who knows? I mean, the Lord, have you seen that tarot card article where they got Trump as judgment upon the American people?
No, I haven't. That would be really interesting, actually.
It was, and they had, there's a whole bunch of cards, but the one I focused in on was they got Trump sitting on planet Earth as judgment. So, and we have that comment that America will not be healed. Well, if it's not going to be healed, then Trump, no matter his great intentions, is not going to be able to heal America. So something must happen that really goes bad that we have all this breakup of the states, and then we have a virtual, true kind of a civil war. Maybe governors of various locations just get together and say, we're going to secede.
Well,
kind of like Texas.
Yeah, you've got, I believe, California, that already coming up in language in California and the government in California, and also I believe Oregon is having the same talk in the background about if things don't go right, they're going to leave the Union, and possibly leaning towards Arizona of some move, and then you've also have had language speak sometime back with Texas, Arkansas, possibly Louisiana, Oklahoma, talking about forming their own, I guess you could call it a nation state. In some of the northern states, I think Colorado and maybe Idaho, and there's a lot of this has been going on in the background for a number of years, but it's just not been out where people are hearing it.
Yeah, and if Obama attempts to seize power away from Trump, that could be the final straw that everybody breaks away from Washington. I mean, he's not above starting a world war and getting into the war scenario. What is going on there with Putin? He's really stepping up the how do we say, the war rhetoric in one sense, and yet trying to calm it down because Trump got elected. We're not going to have a world war, but from what I read, he is angry at Obama and is moving more missiles in. Is that what you've heard?
Well, he's got nuclear missiles moved in Kaliningrad now and up on the Baltic region, and also has armed some of his ships with the capability of firing missiles. And at the same time, there is rhetoric, and I'm getting away from the missiles here we're talking about militarily, but there's also rhetoric moving around right now that Russia is contemplating, if NATO doesn't pull back from the Russian border, that Russia's contemplating shutting off possibly the energy to Europe just as winter begins to set in. So, that's another tool that Putin certainly has, and he and Obama don't jihad. I mean, that's the way we say it here in Oklahoma, but
yes, right.
The trouble is we've got 57, 58 days that Obama still can be Obama, and I did share earlier with you too the trouble that Obama seems to be causing, talking about the Trump negating possibly the Iran deal, and now we've got Iran chiming out and saying they will make a move militarily, if we go against that deal or make a move against that deal. And then we had a general on today on Fox that said that will certainly be trouble, that Iran is being set up to test the new president. And he said the trouble with Trump is Trump won't blink.
Yes. Now, we do have Daniel chapter 8, which more or less indicates that Iran does do blitzkrieg attacks upon its neighbors. And then if Trump is elected, and Trump was in that Bible code, was he not? And Iran was in there with Trump, which would indicate that Trump may be the boy that does the damage and literally destroys Iran in this war, according to Daniel chapter 8. So I'm wondering if Daniel chapter 8 takes place possibly before Isaiah 17 does, and before Ezekiel 38, 39. We don't really know what the time sequence is on those wars. So this could get very, very interesting. I mean, if Iran decides that Trump is probably going to attack, why not preempt it?
Well, that's interesting, and that was Barry Rothman's Torah code you were talking about, where he actually found President Trump stamped on top of Iran and war, right in the Torah code. So Yeah, it apparently means Trump won't blink, and we may be headed right into that. But are we literally going through a door Obama is opening? Is my question.
Well, that could be. He may be deliberately setting this up. I am not convinced at all that Obama is not going to somehow get back in to office. There've been more than one prophecy that he feels that he deserves a third term to finish what he started. And Hillary's probably just a side play. They know she's very ill. In fact, I believe, they have reports now that Trump's not going to bother with Hillary. He may know the inside story, that she's on her way out anyway. She might not even live long enough to be imprisoned when you go through all the systems. So he may not bother with it. But Obama is a guy I think we need to watch more than the Clinton thing. And Trump and what Trump does. Now, Trump made a lot of promises. Now he's backpedaling. Now, if he backpedals too much, he's going to have the conservative right on his tail. And if he does what he promised to do, he is going to buck all of the treasonous globalists in Washington. He can't win no matter what he does. What's your take on some of this backpedaling? Well, we're not going to have a wall. Well, maybe we'll just put up a fence. But he said, yeah, he was going to put up a wall. It is possible, though. He's just trying to, get along with the opposition crowd until he gets into office. Do you think? And then he'll just go ahead and do what he promised to do. That's a possibility.
Well, that could be. I know a lot of people don't like General Michael Flynn, the left, that is. They don't like him at all. They're scared to death of him, is what I'm hearing. And let me read you this headline, though, talking about Donald Trump and where he may be going, because Geopolitical in Israel is saying, and this is a report, says Donald Trump and General Michael Flynn are moving on Syria and Iraq wars. Says they are preparing a comprehensive U.S.-Russian military offensive against ISIS forces shortly after Trump takes office. Says that Trump and Putin and the generals are preparing this offensive to strike ISIS hard shortly after Trump's inauguration.
Well, of course, Hillary Clinton and that group are the ones who formed ISIS to begin with. It's kind of like Al-Qaeda. Some of these other... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you look at where did all of the forces that are battling Assad come from? Our CIA and the administration of Obama and Hillary formed all of this, funded it, and militarized it.
So I guess the next question is, are we watching a grand play that's really going to fool the whole world? We do know from the Bible that Antichrist rises. Now, whether Lucifer and Antichrist are the same person, that's debatable. And I don't think so. I think there's a difference there, but maybe not. But that's the ultimate goal, is the rise of the anti-Messiah. And they can use Trump to do this simply by putting in, it was something that Dr. Peter Beater made a remark. He said when you move things way too fast, when you're changing things and you do it way too fast, that's when the Bolsheviks, the communists, the Marxists, they move in and derail everything that's being tried to do. And it seems like this is what we're going to watch happening. Trump said from day one, I'm going to hit the ground running. Huge changes are coming. If it doesn't work, what happens?
Well, that's true. That's exactly true, Stewart. And And what we're seeing is a supercharged Trump campaign or transition team that is really on the run, building momentum. And we also at the same time see the communists or the left moving quickly to actually encircle or form a line around what is being constructed. And then again, let me add this one, Stewart, because this goes along with what you said earlier. It seems that Turkey now, which NATO's concerned about, because Turkey's the second largest military within NATO, has now changed its mind apparently on joining the EU and backed out of that and is now talking about joining with a Putin or rather a Russian-Chinese triangle.
Well, that would make, I mean, if I was Erdogan, believe it or not, I would do the same thing because after all, Putin and the Russian military, along with China, with their, 100 million man army or whatever they've got now, he's siding with what he would think will be the winners in all of this. Probably not understanding biblical prophecy because Putin ends up, if we're reading it right, destroyed in the end. So this is all going to get very, very interesting. I noticed you had there was an article you mentioned about Pakistan and India are in a pitched battle now, or a skirmish, or what would you call that?
Well, it's very disconcerting to the military. Fox News broke it this evening, here to the day before Thanksgiving, that there had been a pitched battle between the Indian and Pakistan military along the Kashmir, and the troops were dead on both sides. And you said that India had fired I missed that one, that they had fired a missile.
Yes.
You know, so what you
test.
said, and you've said continually for us to continue to keep an eye on those two nuclear forces because they're beginning to have combat along that front.
Yeah, I'm wondering, there have been people who said World War III is going to start in an area that no one would suspect it would start. And I just remember reading an ancient prophecy, I'm not sure where I read it, but it named Pakistan and India. That it would start there, and it would just, how do I word it, expand and expand and expand, and it would finally reach America and Japan, and it would engulf virtually the world at the end of it. So anyway, I guess what do you know? It's just a prophecy. It might be true. It might not be true at all. But it was kind of interesting now that we have that. And Obama, you said something about, well, we talked about it, I guess, that Iran might react to Trump in a very, very negative way. That could also start World War III. Right there.
Yeah, that certainly could.
Anything else you've got on your mind you want to pass on? This Palestinian boat that was sunk, was that sunk by the Israeli Navy?
Well, it was. The Israeli Guard Force, naval force off of Gaza, apparently, you said that there had been some reports or rumors of a ship or a boat being sunk, and that's the only thing I could find that this Palestinian boat apparently tried to run the blockade, and the Israeli Navy sunk it. And so far as that region, that's all I know that there's been any naval activity in the last day or so.
Say, on your latest update, you gave a whole bunch of pictures about what's going on over there, or how do you call them, artifacts up there in the Heavner area and the rhinestones and stuff like that, or rune stones, I guess.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There seems to be a little bit of interest in that direction lately, and also I chimed in with viewzone.com, which is Gary Vay, and his assertion that there's a first tongue, in other words, an ancient global language that some of these derivatives are from that is being on the petroglyphs around the world, all over the whole world, and I posted a little of that. And I also went over to MENA because of the recent interest in Huebner by other people. I'm going to have a radio show soon with that. But when I got over there and talked to the guy that I had been getting some of the artifacts that were coming out of that coal mine, in Huebner, and I sent you an artifact or a plant from ancient times that had been embedded in coal out of that mine. He'd been told to shut up. He wouldn't talk about it anymore and said, "I don't talk about that." He said, "That's a conspiracy theory that there's a coal mine over there. There's not one."
Okay. So he's been told more or less to shut up. So the next question is, who's telling them we don't want this stuff out? That an ancient language should probably be the language of Adam, wouldn't it?
I've heard a number of, especially the rabbis, say that they believe that ancient Hebrew was literally the first tongue, the first written language, and that was pre-flood. And all of this since is derivatives of that pre-flood original language.
And, of course, the world at that time was one continent. And so they probably would be showing up all over the world, because it wasn't until after the Tower of Babel incident and the confusion of the languages that the Lord split the world into the continents we know now. So that would tend to confirm if these are showing up all over. Now, I know Gary Vay, in his book Evil Fire Made to Burn, that's not available anymore, is it? I have a copy, but I don't think you get it.
Yeah, I think people can read that book as an ebook only from his website, viewzone.com. But there's no physical books. I have a copy, and I think you had a copy, and all of them were disappeared. Somewhat like books have happened. This has happened to books over time that people don't want out. They disappear, and you can't get a copy.
Well, let's take a look at that and switch it over to this fake news assault that's going on. Seems to me the only fake news is major media. Now they're rising up to call the alternative media sites fake news.
Yeah.
Well, this could shut down the internet. You got people like Google, you got Facebook. They're already starting to censor. Of course, they've been censoring a long time before now, but now it seems like there's a full-scale war. And
what's interesting, Stewart, is I don't know if you heard it today or not, but I believe it's Mark Zuckerberg or whatever his name is that has Facebook. Now has an algorithm or a censor. A cyber censor, and it's going to be installed in Facebook, but he says it's only going to censor news to China. And what do you want to bet on that,
Well, they'll use it globally, and they'll be censoring out the truth, because the Antichrist system is built upon total lies, so they got to get rid of the truth. So I never thought that they could have an internet like we know it today. When the New World Order comes in, that's got to get squashed immediately. Anyway, how do people reach you, Larry, before we shut down for tonight?
Yeah, my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org. And I do want to wish you and all those listening a very wonderful Thanksgiving and cherish your family time.
Yeah, I agree with that. Folks, have a great Thanksgiving. And whether we get to Christmas or not, remember Queen Elizabeth and somebody else said that last year was the last Christmas we're going to have. Whether they know what they're talking about or not, or the Lord intervenes, I have no idea. But yes, have a good Christmas with your family. Enjoy the time. Things are going to change rapidly once this war really begins to escalate. Thank you, Larry, for all the work you do for us, and we appreciate it. And good night, everybody, and take care of yourselves, because things are going to change. Night.